am wind on sea, I am ocean wave, I am roar of sea, I am bull of 7 fights, I am vulture on cliff, I am dewdrop, I am fairest of flowers, I am all for boulders, I am salmon in pool, I am lake on plain, I am a mountain in a man, I am a word of skill. I am the point of a weapon that poureth forth combat. I am a god who fashioned fire for a head, who smootheth the ruggedness of a mountain. Who is he that announceth the ages of a moon, and who the place where falleth the sunset, who calleth to the cattle of the house of terror, and on whom do the cattle of terror smile? Whom is the truth? Who is the god who fashioned edges in a fortress of gangrene? Enchantment about a spear, enchantment of winds. Fola, I invoke the land of Eru. Eru Bamful Fola, I invoke the land of Eru. For be her seas, perpetually green her forest, I feel her in my bones, I feel her in my blood. I invoke the land of Eru. Surging is the mighty sea, mighty is the upland full of meadows. Full of meadows is the rainy wood. Rainy is the river full of waterfalls. Full of waterfalls is the spreading lake. Spreading is the spring of multitudes. A multitudes of peoples is the assembly of the kings of Tiawa. Tiawa is a tower of tribes, the tribes of the sons of Nil, warriors of ships and vessels. Island is a vast Domen. Eramon smoked her, ere Iber entreated her. I invoke the land of Eru. Eru Bamful Fola, I invoke the land of Eru. Eru Bamful Fola, I invoke the land of Eru. Eru Bamful Fola, I invoke the land of Eru. Fruitful be her seas, perpetually green her forest. I feel her in my bones, I feel her in my blood. Oh, I feel her in my bones, her in my blood. Berries to the berries, the strong upholder, put on the ash of Tutur. 3 fruits upon it, namely acorn, apple, and ash. When the first fruit used to fall, another fruit used to grow. A great man, tree-filiad tree-ocker, a great hero, approached us from the west at sunset. High as woods were his shoulders. The sun and the sky could be seen between his legs. In his left hand was a stone tablet, and in his right hand was a branch with the sacred seeds of the trees upon it. Umugna, great was the fair tree, high its top above the rest. 30 cubits, it was no trifle. That was the measure of its girth. 300 cubits was the height of the blameless tree. Its shadow shouted 1,000. In secrecy it remained in the north and the east until the time of Con Caeld Cadoc. 100 score of warriors, no empty tale, along with 340 would that tree shelter. It was a fierce struggle until it was overthrown by the poets. How fell the bough of Darthy! It spent the strength of many a gentle hireling. The ash, the tree of nimble hosts, its top bore no lasting yield. The ash of Tutur, take count thereof, the ash of populous Ishnak. Their boughs fell, it was not amiss, until the times of the sons of Eid slain. The oak of Mugna, a hallowed treasure, 900 bushels was its bountiful yield. It fell in Darbra, southward, across Mac Alba of the cruel combats. The bowl of Ross, a comely yew, with abundance of broad timber, the tree without hollow or flaw. The stately bowl, how did it fall? And it was Tree Filiad Trioca who came to this company, who gave the seeds from which came those 5 sacred trees. But when he first arrived, he asked for the oldest and the wisest of the Seanchaí, the Storyteller. And one came forward and introduced himself. He said, I am Fintan the White, son of Bukra. I shall not conceal it. Ever since the flood, I am a great and noble sage. Island, whatever is asked of me, I know every taking that took her since the beginning of the tuneful world. For I was in Toltinder at the time of the flood, and I shouted there for 1,002 years as a salmon in the water. And I am co-evil to every generation thereafter. Tree Filiad Trioca looked at him and said, if this be true, then tell me the 5 provenances and the qualities they possess. And he said to him, not hard to answer. In the west is Connacht, which is for knowledge. In the north is Ulster, which is for battle. In the middle is Medea, or Meath, which is for the kingship. In the east is Leinster, which is for prosperity. And in the south is Munster, for music. Ah, said Tree Filiad Trioca, pleased at his response. He said, you truly are a great Seanchaí. And then he stood in those directions, and he expanded on all of those qualities so all of the people could hear this. And he stood in the west, and he said, her learning, her foundation, her teaching, her alliance, her judgments, her chronicles, her counsels, her stories, her histories, her science, her comeliness, her eloquence, her beauty, her modesty, her bounty, her wealth, and her abundance. In the western part, from the west. And then he looked again, and he looked to the north, and he said, her battles, her contentions, her hardihood, her rough places, her strifes, her haughtiness, her unprofitableness, her pride, her captures, her attacks, her hardness, her conflicts from the northern part in the north. And then he looked again, and this time he looked to the east, and he said her prosperity, her supplies, her beehives, her contests, her feats of arms, her nobles, her householders, her wonders, her splendours, her many arts, her accoutrements, her many treasures, her satin, her serge, her silks, her cloths, her green spotted cloths, her prosperity, her householding, from the eastern part in the east. And then he looked again, and this time he looked to the south, and he said, her waterfalls, her fairs, her nobles, her reavers, her knowledge, her subtlety, her musicianship, her melody, her minstrelsy, her wisdom, her honour, her music, her learning, her teaching, her warriorship, her ficule playing, her vehemence, her fierceness, her poetical art, her advocacy, her modesty, her code, her retinue, her fertility, from the southern part in the south. And then he stood in the centre, and he said, her kings, her stewards, her dignity, her primacy, her establishments, her stability, her supports, her destructions, her warriorship, her charioteership, her soldiery, her high principality, her high kingship, her oliveship, her mead, her ale, her bounty, her renown, her great fame, and her prosperity from the centre position. And Fintan Mac Bucra absorbed all of this knowledge, as did the company. And many, many years later, there was a king on the throne, about the time of 545 CE. His name was Céad Diarmid Mac Curvil. And Diarmid Mac Curvil is said to be one of the last kings to acknowledge the pagan rites of Ireland. But he did not want to do it in a mindless way. He wanted to know, why do we do these things? Why at the Feast of Tiawa are we bringing together all these people? Why are we feeding people for 7 days and nights? What is it we're celebrating? And he wanted to know the meaning of the partitioning of the land and all their qualities. And so he asked to see the oldest and wisest Seanchaí. And so a man appeared, grey hair, grey beard, face like a burlap sack, lines of wisdom. And he asked him, tell me, how do we partition the lands of Tiawa? And the man replied, I cannot answer that question, for I know someone older and wiser than I. Okay, can you summon them to me? He said, of course I can. And so another man appeared, grey hair, grey beard, face like a burlap sack, lines of wisdom. He asked the question again. Tell me, how can I partition the lands of Tiawa? And the man replied, I cannot answer that question, for I know someone older and wiser than I. Can you summon them to me? He said, of course I can. And so another man appeared, grey hair, grey beard, face like a burlap sack, lines of wisdom. He asked the question again, how can I fairly partition the lands of Tiawa? And the man replied, I cannot answer that question, for I know someone older and wiser than I. King Diarmid now was slightly impatient, wondered if perhaps these Seanchaís, these storytellers, were playing with him, and he said, so can you summon another man? Can you summon this man that's older and wiser than you? And he said, of course. And another man appeared. You won't believe what he looked like. He had grey hair, grey beard, face like a burlap sack. And when the king asked the question, you won't believe what he said. I cannot answer that question, for I know someone older and wiser than I. And Diarmid said, well, can you bring this older and wiser person to the court? And he said, of course. And another man appeared. And you really won't believe what he looked like. He had grey hair, grey beard, face like a burlap sack. And the king asked the question again, and you won't believe what he answered. He said, I cannot answer the question, for I know someone older and wiser than I. And the king said, well, can you summon this older and wiser person than you? A little bit disgruntled and wondering if they were truly toiling with him. And so he said, yeah, of course. And then another man appeared. Now this man, when he appeared, he had an interesting countenance. It was almost like his face was flickering between human and animal and fairy. He stood there with piercing eyes, and there was something about him that was holding the law of all the land in his blood and in his bone. Diarmid was now curious, and he said, well, he asked the same question again, and the man answered, I can answer the question, for I know no one older and wiser than I. Now the king was curious, and he said, well, how do I know that you're the oldest and the wisest? And he said, well, I planted a single yew berry given to me by the great giant Trifiliad Triocha, the three-cornered strong upholder. And I planted that tree, and I watched it grow and grow and live for many thousands of years. And as it started to degenerate, as it started to no longer be of this world, I took the wood from that tree and I made all sorts of things from it. And even the wood from that tree, even though I oiled it and preserved it well, even that started to degenerate over a long, long time. And still I'm here, and still I'm witnessing the land. King Diarmid thought of this, and he believed what he said, and he said, well, can you tell me how to partition the land? And Fintan mac Bucra told him. Fintan mac Bucra told him of the story of Trifiliad Triocha. He recited the knowledge of the 5 sacred trees of Ireland, and that knowledge was then passed down through into Diarmid mac Curvil at this time. And then Fintan erected a pillar, and on it he engraved the 5 provenances and the qualities that they possess. And King Diarmid said, so do we leave this how it was back when you first heard from Trifiliad Triocha, back in the time of the king of Conan Bechlec? And he said, yes, we do. For Trifiliad Triocha was either a messenger of God, an angel of God, or God himself. Let us leave it as it has been shown to us and shared with us for now and all eternity. And so that was the parting of the land of Tiawa and all of the qualities that the places possessed. Blessed be.